population kept on dwindling. However, the last kingdom was the Hindu nation, where the king, as per the tradition, drew his authority to rule at the behest of Bhagwan Ram. So as you can see in this picture, alongside which shows a non-judicial stamp paper from the time before 1947, it read, "With the grace of Bhagavan Ramji, Kingdom of Jammu Kashmir in Tibet." And we can see here one of the news clippings, the accession of Kashmir into Republic of India on the 23rd of October 1947. And it's saying here, the Hindustan Times, Kashmir accedes to India. The last king, Hari Singh, signed the instrument of accession with the Republic of India and became part of India. Though the last king was a Hindu, the Hindu population was a minority. The partition of the British Raj into India and Pakistan caused huge riots, shocking massacres, brutal murders, and horrific rapes and ethnic cleansing, and a cultural genocide of all of the Hindus in Kashmir. On the 7th of November 1947, terrorists from Pakistan and deserters from the western districts of the state captured Rajouri. The town was surrounded by non-Hindu mobs who carried out extensive killings, loots, and rapes of Hindu residents. According to Indian sources, an estimated 30,000 Hindus and Sikhs living in Rajouri were reportedly killed, wounded, or abducted. And many Hindus and Sikhs, on one after the other, on 25th of November, gathered in Mirpur for shelter and protection, were killed by the Pakistani terrorists and troops. Mass rape and abduction of women was also reported, and estimates measure the death count as over 20,000. However, it was in the year 1990 when Hindus were completely exterminated from Kashmir. In 1990, to kill people saying that they were kafir was not politically a good strategy anymore. So internationally also, it would not be justifiable strategy. They needed a better strategy. Now, we'll also understand the Hindu Holocaust that happened in Bangladesh. Have you ever heard before about the 1971 Hindu genocide done in Bangladesh? And if we see just the numbers, in 1951, there were 22% of the population was Hindu. And in 2011, it dropped more than 50% to 8.9%. And we had 3 million dead Hindus and 300,000 who were raped. And the Kashmiri propaganda was used to justify Hindu genocide. After losing the war in the 1970s, the terrorists, in revenge, created a fictitious identity called Kashmiriyat. Kashmiriyat word was coined to imply Islamic origin of Kashmir. They claimed the land solely belonged to people of their religion, and Hindus had nothing to do with Kashmiriyat or Kashmir. Kashmiriyat word was cunningly used to mask and disguise what was actually religious intolerance and religious persecution as a dispute originating from geography. The international community thought it was a geographical dispute, and they stayed away. While killing Hindus, terrorists needed nothing more than knowing they were killing kafirs, the non-believers of their religion. And the malicious anti-Hindu mass media confused the entire country to think it was a political geographical dispute, but it was something to do with war crime, and Kashmir was just a war zone. The average Indian citizen was systematically brainwashed by media mafia to think that he or she need have any ounce of sympathy or empathy or feeling of standing up for human rights or religious rights of Hindus. The religious extremists forewarned all Hindus to either leave, convert, or die. And following this, thousands of Hindu men, women, and children were brutally killed. Before the exodus of 1990, there were at least 160,000 Hindus who lived in Kashmir. And today, 30 years after the violent exodus, there's only 4,000 remaining. And terrorists have only three options in Hindus: either convert, flee, or perish. We can go on to the next slide. But if we see the reality of the situation, the Hindu population, even in Kashmir, even small children were being absolutely murdered grossly. How can someone kill small children? Because of geographical disputes, because of religious extremism, because children were kafir, or out of their fictitious Kashmiriya descendancy. Whatever reason the killer may have subscribed to, how can somebody justify anything if it comes to murder? Kailasa is the one hope for reviving the Kashmiri Shaivism. And Kailasa is reviving sampradayas like the Kashmiri Shaivism, which got completely destroyed. Kailasa is recreating and reviving the sampradayas, monasteries, temples, deities, library, and everything needed to revive the ancient tradition. But in the incomplete antithesis to established laws, the state police foisted an illegal case against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. On the 4th March 2010, the state police of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka together foisted an illegal case against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. It involved glaring illegalities which were completely contrary to well-established laws and procedures. It was against basic human rights and absolutely unconstitutional. In this, the anti-Hindu militant leaders gave a letter with false police, and this particular anti-Hindu mentioned no crime, no victim, no witness, and nor any evidence. The so-called complaint of this anti-Hindu militant terrorist named Lenin was an obvious facade for the blatant lawfare that was unleashed against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. Despite having no complaint, no crime, no victim, and no jurisdiction, no crime, prima facie, or anything, yet the complaint was instantaneously registered at 8 p.m. on 4th March 2010 by the police and this was 48 hours after a morph video had been released with a massive wave of character assassination incited and launched to incite mob violence, mob hatred, mob lynching, and even multiple assassination attempts against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. On the 2nd, we also have the false stories that were maliciously accepted by the police station as a formal police complaint. Third, the Egmore police on their own had an IPC section 376 of rape, even though the letter by Lenin in itself did not even mention any word of rape. The police acted beyond the legal reach of the jurisdiction for a matter of Bidadi, Karnataka. The fabricated complaint was transferred 400 kilometers to the jurisdiction of Bidadi of the matter, and the Karnataka police offered a bribe inviting people to pose as a false witnesses. And 7th, nobody accepted the bribe to become false witnesses. Even before arresting the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, the police lied to the court saying that they had already arrested the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. A few hours later, the police actually illegally arrest him. These are the series of crimes that so many anti-Hindu elements and terrorists had worked together to conduct and execute against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And this is a photograph of one of the main conspirators and anti-Hindu militants. He is a pawn of the anti-Hindu conspirators who gave a letter to the police in the name of a complaint. And again, he neither mentioned any crime, nor any victim, or any witnesses, or any semblance in the complaint. But the police accepted it as a formal police complaint, with no primary investigation even. What is evident from this complaint is not any so-called crime by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, but Lenin's own criminal intent and conduct towards women, as he himself admits that he had hated the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism for engendering and protecting a safe enlightenment ecosystem tuned to higher spiritual pursuits, for which brahmacharya or celibacy for those who chose to walk in this path as monks is part of the chosen lifestyle. Now, we have to ask ourselves, in a country where you live, can somebody narrate a story about like this and have it accepted by the police? The next slide, please. And these false stories were maliciously accepted by the police station, and it was converted into a formal complaint. The next slide, please. The next slide, please. The malicious false case on the basis of baseless suspicion was registered 400 kilometers far from the residence of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, which is the legal jurisdiction by law for any complaint. It is very clear that it is an absolutely unlawfully created illegal complaint beyond their jurisdiction that was transferred 400 kilometers to the jurisdiction. And the case was unlawful, beyond the jurisdiction, and absolutely fabricated. And there was even no real complainant. Even the main anti-Hindu conspirator had claimed only of his suspicions. The next slide, please. The Karnataka police offered bribes openly on television channels, and you're seeing some of the examples here. On television channels, newspapers, and social media to create false witnesses, but nobody accepted their offer. The desperate police begged and threatened even female devotees of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, like the well-known actress Ranjita, to make false allegations of rape. And here you're seeing these article clippings where it's saying the CID has invited more information about cases lodged against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, ashram in Bidadi. The sleuths have promised to protect the informant's identity, and travel and other costs will be provided too. This is a blatant bribe on public news channels and newspapers. Again, here it says, CID chief goes on Facebook and appeals to victims of crime to come forward and depose against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And so far, no one has bothered to respond to his post. Nobody even accepted the bribe to become a false witness. Even before arresting the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, it was lied in court saying that they had already arrested him. A few hours later, the police actually illegally arrested him. And this was in spite of the fact that they did not even find a single false accuser or of the false rape charge they had foisted against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in this fabricated complaint. If there had been no lie, the Council of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism would have secured an anticipatory bail, after which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism could not have been arrested. If this was a straightforward case of sexual abuse, as claimed by the anti-Hindu militant terrorists and the media nexus, who was the victim? Neither was there any victim mentioned in the third person's complaint, or is there even a word of rape mentioned? A massive manhunt is launched and lawfare is launched. Why? There were so many unanswered questions. The justification propaganda was launched. Sanitarian services by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was literally buried under a flood of lawfare and hate propaganda, targeting and singling out the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and shaming and socially isolating him. So the anti-Hindu terrorists and anti-Guru Hindu mafia could carry out their plan to assassinate the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in anonymity. And you'll just watch this brief video where it shows how multiple states together foisted the illegal cases against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and show the juxtaposition of what the truth was. Yes, we can go on to the next slide. Another false case was filed in Puducherry, Tamil Nadu against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism on the 5th of March 2010. And already the exact same false case had been filed a few days earlier in another city in Tamil Nadu, and yet was based on the same false, absurd allegations. Multiple same false cases were filed against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, which is illegal. It's basically like double jeopardy. In the meantime, hundreds of temples, centers, and monasteries founded by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and established by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism were literally burned, raided, and destroyed. In 6 days, 3 complaints from 3 different locations, Puducherry, and two other locations on the very same false allegation of hurting religious sentiment from multiple third parties were filed against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And these false complaints, the previous slide, please. These false complaints were used to deny bail to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism with the intention to keep him imprisoned forever. In prison, attempts were made to kill the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and only 6 years later, some of these false complaints were quashed by respective courts, terming them as baseless. And sandalwood trees grow naturally in the monastery of Bengaluru in Adi Kailash, as it is close to the forest area. However, on the 26th of April 2010, the police sent a notice to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism demanding him to appear in court in 19 days prior to the date of the notice. Here we have that very notice, where it's from the Assistant Forest Officer in Ramnagara Division, and the date 19 days prior to when the letter was actually dated, they had summoned the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in court. False charges of sandalwood smuggling were non-bailable. It was a planned strategy to arrest the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and keep him indefinitely in custody until they could force a false confession from him using severe forms of torture. The cunning strategy of lawfare using false allegations of specially selected non-bailable crimes supported by the character assassination through media justification propaganda were deployed to justify the unlawful arrest of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and his prolonged time in custody with no basis whatsoever, and shocking custodial torture and relentless multiple assassination attempts. The police raided the monastery and they caught hold of simple pieces of fabric on which tiger skin pattern was printed. The media immediately framed the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism on false charges of using wildlife animal products such as real tiger print, pelt, skin of leopard and spotted deer, and wild dog. Similarly, several other absurd false cases were filed against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And not only this, but on top of that, there were more than 14,000 hours of defamatory and hate speech spread in the media. And the map of India here is showing the state of Tamil Nadu in saffron. The regions in saffron show places where the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism had established more than 5 major temple monasteries and more than 55 temples in the entire state. During the first week of March 2010, all the temples were burned and destroyed and shut down by anti-Hindu militant forces. And the police sent an illegal notice to the banks ordering them to freeze the bank accounts of the public charitable trust associated with the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. The residents were left to die with no food or support and were told, if you don't have food, eat air. And not just this, but the anti-Hindu elements in the central government departments, such as the Ministry of External Affairs, the Passport Office, also acted against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. The Passport Office impounded the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's passport with no notice and for no reason. And we also see how in the media had been continuously trying to create a false victim against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. In a shocking display of open warfare, they advertised in the newspaper and in Facebook, inviting anyone who would be ready to come and in order to file as a false victim, file a false complaint against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And the police even openly declared that a bribe so that the victims who were not there could come forward. And here, are some of the media articles during this time. The complaint against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism did not mention any victim, yet the charges slapped against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism were rape and unnatural sex. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was a victim of a huge conspiracy, and the religious sentiments of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism followers were relentlessly abused. But the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was slapped with conspiracy, cheating, and hurting religious sentiments. Later, in September 2010, the High Court of Karnataka itself described this entire false case and trial as torture, targeting the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism under the guise of suspicion. The truth is that His Divine Holiness, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, the truth is that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism continues to contribute to the revival of the most ancient, pristine Hindu civilization, the enlightenment ecosystem, through Kailasa, the only Hindu nation. To revive Kailasa, the ancient enlightened civilization, and the great cosmic borderless Hindu nation, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism works untiringly in the following two directions. As the current coronated pontiff of the ancient temple monastery complexes called the Adinams, and also by establishing new Adinams across the world. The next slide, please. Not by revolution, by evolution is the solution. In Kailasa, there's no conflict or war. And by settling model communities, enlightenment ecosystems, the Sarvagna Pitas is the solution that Kailasa is doing across all over the world. And this is the reality that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been contributing for the last more than 2 decades, the last 27 years. Anti-Hindu terrorists and anti-Guru Hindu mafia have been attacking Hindus and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, trying to force the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism to stop or halt his mission. But life will become a failure fighting with enemies. Kailasa and the citizens of Kailasa need to start doing and taking responsibility in order to ensure that Hinduism is protected for the next generations. And the real work for which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, the incarnation of Paramashiva, happened on planet Earth is fulfilled for the whole of humanity. And not only this, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is continuously, every single day, been guiding every one of us and helping each and every one of us through various programs, through darshans and dikshas, and of course, the Nithyananda Satsang. Now, it has come time for each and every one of us to get ready for the darshan of the Supreme, the darshan of Paramashiva himself. Let us get ready and sit with our head, neck, and spine in a straight line. And sit with your head and neck and spine in a straight line. And let us begin chanting the Mahavakya and get ready for the presence of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Continue chanting the Mahavakya and let us get ready for the darshan, the divine presence of the incarnation, Paramashiva. Let's get ready.
Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om 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 Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Om Nithyananda Paramashivoham. Paramashivoham.